Hello everyone, welcome to the .NET Mirror channel. Today we'll try to understand how you can create and deploy ASP.NET Core web application to Azure App Service. And the objectives of this video is to understand what is Azure App Service and why you need an Azure App Service and what are different supported deployment methods you have in Azure App Service. And we will try to create a basic ASP.NET Core web application. And once the application is created, we will try to deploy this web app from the Visual Studio by connecting to your Azure account. And also the other way you can deploy using a published profile, we will see that as well. To understand this video, the prerequisite you should have is Visual Studio IDE, Azure account, and you should have development knowledge on ASP.NET and C Sharp, and you should have basic knowledge of Azure. So if you don't have Visual Studio IDE, what you can do, so let me go on to internet. You can go and just download Visual Studio edition. The current version is 2022. You can just go there and download it, and you can start implementing your web application. To get started on Azure account, I have a detailed video and I'll provide the details in the description. Let's get started. Now let's understand what is Azure App Service. Azure App Service is a fully managed platform as a service called as PaaS, which enables you to build and deploy your web applications, RESTful APIs, or mobile backends without managing the underlying infrastructure. You can build your web apps with .NET Core, Java, PHP, Python, or Ruby. These are the programming language supported by the Azure App Services. Also, you can run your apps in containers both on Windows and Linux virtual machines. Let's go to the next slide. Why Azure App Service? So let's try to understand why you need to deploy to the Azure App Service. Azure App Service provides many features to the developers to build, manage, deploy, scale your web applications in the cloud. And let's look at few features of Azure App Service. As we discussed, you can build your web application with your own programming language, whatever you're comfortable, and deploy to the Azure App Service. And also, you can build web applications, mobile applications, and the API apps. And it is a fully managed service with inbuilt infrastructure maintenance, patching, security, and scaling, which means that you don't need to worry about underlying infrastructure, its maintenance, patching, security aspects. Everything will be managed by the Microsoft. And your app can run on Windows or Linux machines with the scale. Even you can run your apps on the containers as well. The next one is the auto scaling, which means that whenever there is a demand for your application, you can configure auto scaling so that your app will scale up automatically. And whenever there is no demand for your application, you can scale it down so that you can save the costing aspects. The next one is the high availability. It's an inbuilt feature. Your app service always up and running with the right plan. So you have to select the standard or premium plans for this. And you can easily configure continuous deployment and integration. There are many options we will look at in the next slide. The next one is the deployment slot, which means that let's say you deployed your application to the Azure App Service. Let's say that you want to do some changes, and before moving it to production you want to test it once, right? So what you can do, you can deploy your web app to the Azure App Service and do the changes, then configure a deployment slot called staging slot. Then you deploy your app to the staging slot. You verify all your changes. Once you're comfortable and tested, then you can do a swap slot from production to the staging so that your staging changes will go to the production with minimal downtime. And the next one is the networking. Always the security is the important aspect for web applications. So you can configure virtual networks so that you can restrict your application within networks and all. You can do that. Even there is a dedicated app service environment, you can configure that as well. Next one is the custom domain. Whenever you deploy a particular application, we will see in the demo. So Azure automatically gives like your app name dot azure websites dot net, right? If you want to configure to your own domain, right, you can configure that and map it to the Azure App Service, that you can easily do it. And SSL and TLS certificates you can easily integrate with the web app. And Azure App Service by default provides Azure SSLs, but you can bring your own third party SSLs and configure it. And also it provides multiple pricing plans based on your needs and all. You can choose the right plan, and based on that you can configure your app service. And there are many integrations you can do with Azure App Services, like you can configure Azure SQL database talking to the app service, or Cosmos DB talking to the app service, Azure AD Key Vault. There are many more Azure services you can easily configure to the Azure App Service. Next one is the authentication and authorization. Out of the box, App Service provides multiple identity providers like Azure AD, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Microsoft account. And with single click, you can easily just configure these identity providers as your authentication and authorization for your application. And there is a monitoring aspect as well. You can easily configure Azure Monitor to your Azure App Services, so that it is easy for the developers to track how your app is performing. And if there is a problem, right, you can easily troubleshoot with this particular setting. Okay, let's move on to the next one. In the previous slide, for the seventh point, right, we talked about you can easily do continuous deployment and integration, right? Now there are many ways you can do deployments. First one is Azure DevOps. It is easy way to configure your CI/CD, and you can run your code, run your test, generate the artifacts, and deploy it to the Azure App Service. Second one is the GitHub. You can easily configure GitHub actions, and with the GitHub workflows, you can deploy to the Azure App Service. There are other options like Bitbucket, local Git, and OneDrive, right? You can do those as well. And the next one is the Dropbox, and also Dropbox is similar to the OneDrive, where you can configure and deploy your files from Dropbox to the Azure App Service. And the seventh one is the FTP or SFTP, right? What you can do, you can create your web application, build it, publish it, and take those files, and using any of the like file transfer tools like FileZilla, you can just simply connect to your Azure App Service and move your files to the Azure App Service. So that's the easiest way to do, like traditional way what we used to do before. The next one is from the Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. This is the easiest option for the developers whenever you're doing the development, right? So you can directly deploy from your development environment to the Azure, and you can do with publish profile as well. In today's demo, we will concentrate more on this eighth one. And there are other options like you can do AZ web app up, like PowerShell commands or Azure CLA commands you can do. There is a zip deployment or var deployment. Now let's try to focus bit on the eighth one, how you can deploy from your Visual Studio IDE, and also how you can do with the publish profile. Now let's get into the demo. Let's open Visual Studio. We'll open as run as administrator. So it opens a window to select a project. So select create new project and select ASP.NET Core Web App. If you are not finding it out, right, so you can just search ASP.NET Core and you should ideally get it. So let me select ASP.NET Core Web App. Let's give demo first app to Azure. So I'll not do anything. Go next. Framework is .NET 6. Let it be no authentication. So now it's creating a ASP.NET project with predefined templates. There will be a couple of pages in this. One is index page and privacy page. So first let's run this particular application. So if you see, there is a title over here. You click on home page, welcome, and there is a privacy page. So now this app is working on a local machine. Now let's deploy this to the Azure. So let me close this. So how you can deploy to Azure? So already there is a window over here, publish your app to Azure. But let me right click on the project. So there is option called publish, and here you have different option to deploy to Azure, Docker container, web server, import profile. So let's choose Azure here, and ours is Azure App Service. Even though it's a .NET Core, you can deploy on a Windows or a Linux. But let me choose Windows. Okay, you get a publish profile screen here. So if you see on the top right corner, there is an account already logged in. So how you can check this account is, you can go on to your account settings, and here you can see what kind of accounts are added. So if you want to add or remove, you can use this particular option. Now let's click here, Azure, Windows. Okay, so I have already having a subscription pay as you go. So I'll continue this. And as of now, we don't have any app services under my subscription. So let's create a new. So by default, it takes your title and it appends some numbers over here. So I'll remove this. And this name should be unique. So I'm just putting .NET Mirror. And resource group, it is trying to deploy to one, but let me do like a right. And you have to select a hosting plan. So as of now, it is selecting S1. It is a bit costlier. So I'll not change the app service plan. I'll not change the location as well. But let me uh, put like a shared one, or else let me select a free one. Okay, now we selected name, subscription, a new resource group, and a free hosting plan. So let's create this. So it is creating the app service in the background. Okay, now our app service is created. So let me select this one, finish. So now it is creating a profile and it will deploy our application. Right now the profile got created. So let's deploy this. Now if you look at here, the publish is started, and once this is done, you will get an URL. So it is deploying all our required output files to the www root and required files to the application. So now if you see here, web app is published successfully, and this is our URL. So let me take this URL, go on to the browser. See, now our app is deployed and it's running on Azure App Service. If you look at here, this is our app and it is appended with Azure Websites.net. Just to cross check, let's log into Azure portal, portal.azure.com. So here we used Azure account with .NET@hotmail.com. So let me use the same. So use another account. So I have MFA enabled. So let me approve the MFA. Now if you go to resource groups, we created a resource group called first demo. Within this resource group first demo, we have one app service plan and also one app service is deployed. So let's select the app service plan. So we selected east us, and also we selected pay as you go subscription, and we selected pricing plan of free tier, right? So let's go to the free tier. So you'll be having a lot of other instances like shared, basic, standard, and premium. So there are a lot of differences. As of now, we selected free. But if you want to have your own dedicated one, you can go for standard and premium. So I'll ignore this for now. And there is a one app service which got deployed. So if I take this URL, and it is same, right? So this is where you can deploy your web application. So what I will do now is, let me close this. Let me go to privacy page. I'll just call it as, now if you go here and select the privacy one, so we don't have any new content. So now I added a new content. Let me quickly republish this, because we already selected previously. Now it is easy to deploy. So let's click on publish, and we got a message called publish succeeded. Let me go and refresh here. Yeah, now we got a new text called added new content. So this is way you can add new pages, you can do whatever the changes you want, you can do a republish. Okay, now let's try to understand how can we deploy this particular app using the publish profile. Now what I'm going to do this time, instead of doing it from Visual Studio, so let me go to the first demo. So let me create a web app. So let's call it as web app. So select web app. Yeah, I'll select pay as you go. First demo, I'll call it as DNM. Second demo is available. I'll just select .NET 6 Windows, and within this used to US already there's app service plan, right? So we can reuse that, because it is .NET 6 of same region, so you can use your existing plan. And if you're not finding any app service plan, you can create a new one. So I'll just go to the deployment section. I'll skip this for now. I'll skip networking, skip monitoring, skip tags, review and create. So let's create this. In the meanwhile, I'll just go and do some change over here. Instead of added new content, I'll just call it as second app deploy using publish profile. So I'll save this. So our deployment is in progress still. Now the deployment is done. I got a notification here. So let's go to the resource. So this is our another web app, and let me select the app service plan. Now if you see here, there are two apps. One is the first app which we created from Visual Studio, but the second app we created from the portal. Now we will try to deploy the second app using the publish profile from the Visual Studio. Okay, this is our second one. Okay, now if you see here, our second app is running and waiting for your content. Now what we will do is, instead of connecting from here, we will just try to download the publish profile. So let's download the publish profile. So publish profile is downloaded. Now let's go here, publish. So we'll say new. So this time, instead of Azure, we'll say import profile. Click on next. So it's asking for publish profile. So let's go to the downloads. So you will get a dot publish settings. So let's select this, finish. So now if you look at here, it is trying to deploy to the second site. So let's publish this. So it is getting published. So now our publish is succeeded. So let's take this URL. So previously we were having this particular content. Now if I refresh the same URL, whatever the website we have in the first app, it got deployed. But the only change is, like, if you go to the privacy one, so it says second app deployed using the publish profile, right? Yeah, coming to the app slot. So one particular app service plan, you have uh, two web apps. The first one we created from Visual Studio, kind of an IDE. We selected all the option, but in the second case, we created from the Azure portal. We have taken the publish profile. We imported the publish profile to the app and deployed. Okay, now let's try to summarize what we learned in this particular video. We understood about what is Azure App Service, and what are the different kind of features you have with Azure App Service, and different deployment methods you can do with Azure App Service. And we particularly focused about deploying from Visual Studio and also deploy using the publish profile. And thanks for watching this particular video. Please subscribe to our channel Dotted Mirror and give a like to the video to reach out to the many people. Do share and click on the bell icon to get notifications. Thanks for watching.